Gesches, so happy to have you here. You've been an incredible inspiration on community building, and as we connect and elevate amazing voices of women building fintech companies, financial communities, and communities in general, you're definitely one that's been on our radar for a long time. So thanks for being here.
So honored to be here.
Well, I'd love to kind of kick off and just understand a little bit about your investment journey, which wherever it's at, kind of what was your first ever investment, if you can remember what it was and what had got you started?
I'll start out with my background because my job was actually to invest, essentially. I worked at a hedge fund for half a decade on the investment side, healthcare-focused hedge fund that came out of SAC. So it was interesting that right out of college, I learned the investment process from a professional perspective, which obviously isn't always what you do in a personal perspective, but just really in depth. It was long, short hedge fund, so research into all the industries. But for me personally, obviously owning stock is a very common one. So I had a managed fund through JP Morgan, and then invested into a company called Forte, which is a female founder, and it does streaming of fitness boutique classes. That's what they started out with, and now they have a white label solution.
Wow, so that was one of your first investments, was a stock in Forte as a personal investment?
Yes. So my first personal investment that was outside of the public markets was an angel investment into Forte.
Oh, fantastic. Got it. Amazing. And it went well, it sounds like.
Yes, so they benefited strongly from the pandemic, obviously, and like amazing founder. Like I just, especially with angel investments, obviously you really believe in the founders, even if they pivot and all of that. And the verdict's obviously still out. Like that's the thing with angel investments, right? Like it's riskier in some ways. In some ways, you have more downside risk and more upside risk, but they haven't had an exit yet. So we can't yet say that it's successful. Obviously, for me, it is in my terms, but the financial success needs to still be determined. But I'm very positive.
Amazing. I didn't realize that you started your career in hedge funds too, which is super interesting. And now you're building this amazing community around Dreamers and Doers, which is very connected to supporting women in their professional world. So I'd love to just hear more about how and why you got into this space.
Yes, so we support extraordinary entrepreneurial women, and we do this through a values-driven community, as well as PR opportunities and a diverse ecosystem. And this started by accident out of a personal need. So I had a background as an investor. I had worked for a few early stage startups, and nothing that you do will prepare you for starting a company from scratch. Like as a first-time founder, you can relate. There's just so much you're learning for the first time, and you just really need a network, both for tangible resources, but also for intangible resources, because sometimes just like you have hard days, it's part of being an entrepreneur, just to keep going and knowing that it's not just you is so helpful. So very organically, while I was working on a different company, Dreamers and Doers started, and I never intended to work on this full time, but it took a life of its own. And people sometimes ask me like, how did you come up with the idea? But it's more that the idea found me, and it was my kryptonite, and I couldn't stop doing it. And I've been doing it for 8 years now.
Wow. And so what role do you play in the space? But I think it's related even just professionally. And why do you think it's important?
I think we can invest in many different ways. So traditionally, obviously, we talk about money. I don't think we talk enough about investing our knowledge, our time, and our energy in others. So I have done a few angel investments into companies as well as into funds. But I also view Dreamers and Doers as a way of investing in other entrepreneurs through the network I've been able to create and all of that. So financial capital is so essential, and especially women and minorities don't get enough of it. And a pat on the back and advice sometimes can only go so far. But I do think there also is a component of increasing wealth through network effects and through resources. And our emphasis on providing PR opportunities is one of those things where you as the founder, you can spend all this money on a PR agency, and we never aim to fully replace that, but especially early on, being able to get that outside validation is so important and really transforms you nearly like capital could.
It's an incredible insight, and I feel like it lends really well to the next question, which is, what do you think is the most exciting thing you've learned that you would want others to know?
Right. In our case, we intentionally bootstrapped and didn't take outside funding, talking about wealth specifically. But in society, it's oftentimes cheerleaded, like certain things are cheerleaded too much in terms of like getting outside capital or having that job that your parents are so proud of you for, right? Like when I quit my hedge fund job to, go over to the startup world, my parents thought I was crazy. Or even at the same time, like, oh, women, like not to talk about money that much, or like, ambition, and women are more likely to be considered greedy if they go after money, which is so silly. Like, it's so important to create wealth, but also to determine like what is our definition of success. Some of the people that I know who are the wealthiest people are the most unhappy people. So I think like there's also different ways of defining wealth as well, and how you create it. There's I like saying I would rather fail at something I love than succeed at something that's robbed me of my entire soul. So like, how have you attained your wealth, and is it aligned with your values?
I really love that. I was going to go down a road of what's your definition of success, but I feel like that really sums it up. And is there a person or company that inspires you in this space, and why?
I love companies that do social good, but ideally also make a profit, because that is just so much more sustainable. And I'll maybe say a different story around like the success, but there used to be a company I was so obsessed with, and I thought like, oh, I wish my company was more like that. And then I had this insane fortune to sit next to their former CEO at a lunch. He had taken the company public, so it's like a really big company that does social good. Maybe some people can guess. Hopefully they can't guess, because what I'm about to share. I asked him, so when you were working for the company, like what percentage was drudgery to you versus like were you actually truly happy? And he said 80% was horrible, right? So, and I think it's like, even if we admire someone or something from the outside, like it's only half of the story. And I think admiration is so important, but not at the cost of not embracing our own journey. And every journey has parts that suck, that are painful, and just being very cognizant of what those parts are, and kind of consciously embracing them, and understanding that's part of the journey. And the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
And what advice would you give to somebody getting started in their wealth journey, in their entrepreneurial journey?
As women more so, and maybe that was just my journey, but we're so conditioned to think about what should we be doing, especially if prior you weren't an entrepreneur, or you're working for someone else, like, or even in school, like what do I need to do to get good grades? What do I need to do to get promoted? What do I need to do to make my boss happy? But then your wealth journey and your entrepreneurial journey are so personal. So I needed to do a lot of deprogramming, and I needed to get to know myself better. So I would journal and be like, okay, how was my day? Why did I have a shitty day? And I had to write down line for line, like, well, I realized I really enjoy this, and I really don't enjoy that. Or I realized I'm not direct enough, or I don't go after what I truly want. And if you're going to invest your money, I think it's so important to understand how you want to invest it in terms of being values aligned. You don't want to promote causes that aren't aligned with your values. But investing is also fun. So figuring out what industry, what vertical you want to become an expert at, and how you want to do it. Like, I love that Eve does it with women partners in crime, and that's such a more fun way to do it, and it increases your chances of success. It makes you stick to it, and you make like-minded friends and partners.
Yeah, I really love that. And also, because you get to choose your own vertical, you can share that with others, and you don't have to be the expert at everything. So it sort of distributes the pressure in a way, and the fun and the joy and the learning.
Yes.
Definitely. And is there anything else we should know? Anything like what you're working on? Anything we should kind of keep a pulse on before we end?
We have an amazing monthly newsletter that goes out that gets rave reviews. So anyone who is on an entrepreneurial journey at any stage, we curate amazing resources for entrepreneurial women, or anyone having a business. So I checked that out. It's called The Digest, dreamersdoers.com/The Digest.
So grateful for you and to share this. And I think this is such a great spotlight for entrepreneurs in our communities. And thanks again. And I can't wait to see you in LA.
Yes, can't wait to see you. Thank you so much. Bye.